This channel is a lot of my stories, you know? Stuff I went through or learned from, and this was a lot. I mean, after being scared for so long about how I'd ever talk about this, I wanted to be tactful, and it was so complicated. A huge web of context, like where to begin. And so much of it was bad. How would I find a way to make a story where so many bad things would feel good to hear? Because that's kind of what I'm trying to do here, is pull the good from the bad and appreciate the lessons, but it felt impossible. A hill that I'd never try to climb. And I'm just excited to tell someone. Is that silly? It might be. So, between the ages of 13 to 17, I had a different username, and my persona was a discount Vocaloid fansona. You might already know about this. During this time, 3 major events transpired in my life online. One, I already shared. It was the story of Chalupa Boy, my first stalker. So, 2, a story for another time, was the Encyclopedia Dramatica article written about me. And 3, our story for today, which cannot be so neatly summed up in so few words. I guess you could say it was my first long-term friend group, which I wish I could say the name of it, but I'm not gonna, because you'd find way too much gross stuff, and it'll make sense, I promise. If you know the name of this group, if you know the name of any of these people, I am begging you to not divulge. I don't want to drag anyone down, because a lot has happened. So when I was 13 to 14 years old, I made a YouTube video about a bad anime. The point of the video was, this bad anime that was considered irredeemably bad had purpose. I was so young, and I still had a lot of trouble articulating myself well, and I didn't even really understand yet that I was neurodivergent, which, take note because that's gonna matter for later. In this video, I basically argued that even the worst ecchi anime could still be enjoyed from the perspective of laughing with some buddies about how absurdly bad it is. That any property, no matter how bad or flawed, could still be enjoyed from the perspective of riffing. I did not yet understand when I made this point that the entire world of commentaries online was beginning to exist. Hilarious now in retrospect, because that video I made caught the attention of one bright-eyed little boy who asked to interview me for his YouTube channel. He was just this little pipsqueak who got so excited about Transformers and cartoons and crossovers. He was asking me questions about characters I'd never heard of, shipping questions for series that I'd never watched, but his energy, his joy and his passion for these topics, it was contagious. Like, he had no fear to share what he loved. And the interview was, admittedly, a train wreck. But we became friends online. We'd hang in Skype group calls, and whenever it would get too quiet, he'd invite more people. I met so many people through this excited kid. Chalupa Boy even met me through him. What I didn't know was, the video of our interview, it was being received by a lot of people with the same energy I had for that ecchi anime. That mindset of, oh, this is terrible, but it's fun to laugh at. Over the next years, I'd meet so many people through him, though. Some of us would call each other by first names, others would go by only their usernames, which I'm sure this is familiar to a lot of folk. It really hit me that these friend groups are everywhere now, on every platform, but back then, this was the first time that I'd ever been a part of something so huge, you know? But as I said in the Chalupa Boy video, these people were all very edgy. A mishmash of ages, some of which were displaying behavior that should not have been anywhere near children or teenagers online. The harsh truth is, there were so many folk with so many beefs with each other, and I was even guilty of my share of beefs. But that's cause and effect when you have so many different types of people together. Most of us didn't even really understand politics back then, but it was old age internet, lots of cursing, slurs, mic spam yelling. It wasn't the most comfortable, and it wasn't ideal, but it was normalized, and when I got home from school at the end of the day, I remember being so excited to finally have a group of friends who seemed excited to add me into a call. And we'd joke and talk about games late into the night. I had no idea how deep some members' connections went, or the backstory of why some topics would make people go quiet. One of those topics being another group of friends entirely. Turns out the group that I was in had been an even larger web at one point. Here I was thinking it was just a couple Skype groups, but it was so much larger. Multiple forums, channels, even meetup trips amongst the members. The history of this group completely outweighed my capacity as a teenager to understand how big things actually were. Everyone knew someone who knew someone. Calls would be recorded, groups had moles, and moles would incentivize members to cause waves. They'd bring up topics they knew would sting, or they'd take advantage of some of the younger members, because more often than not, these young members hadn't experienced much socially. They were more susceptible to baiting and trolling and, well, making into a spectacle. The boy who interviewed me was a common target, which, by affiliation, I didn't know also meant that I had eyes on me. And joining this overall group, which already had Fallout history, I had no idea what I had gotten myself into. And sometimes videos would go up insulting these friends of mine over topics so strange, about cartoon opinions or graphics in video games. But I and all my friends would rush into the comments to defend our friends, you know? Like children might do, who don't understand that sometimes people are just mean on the internet for fun and no other reason. A lot of us had this compulsion to defend each other because this group was our entire world. In these calls, well, I was pretty meek. I would be catty sometimes, sure, but for the most part, I thought to be a good girl who had to perform all these things that didn't make sense yet because I was still closeted. Turns out I'm trans! But I didn't curse others out, I didn't join in when people would start yelling for fun, but several members of this group and I thought, wouldn't it be funny if the quiet, polite girl in the group who wants to be friends with everyone made a rant over something completely innocuous and minuscule? Anyone who knew me in those calls knew that this was completely outside my comfort zone. But it was a funny enough bit that I was kind of into it. I worked myself up and I recorded a rant about doors. But it's only in retrospect, 11 years later, that I realized the 15-year-old who was ranting about doors was not ranting about doors. I was in high school, a different high school from all my classmates I'd grown up with, and I was undiagnosed. I didn't have friends in school, and when I tried, I had no idea why being nice wasn't enough. And I didn't understand why when I held the door open for my classmates, they wouldn't look at me. They wouldn't talk to me. When I called from across the hall with my arms full and would say, "Please hold the door," they'd ignore me. I had no idea that my peers saw me as a socially awkward kid on the spectrum and wanted nothing to do with me. I just thought, wow, people don't care about doors anymore. And that target on my back? I had no idea someone was already taking aim. Quick side note, not sponsored, just want to say thank you to all the stars in my patron constellation. I make lots of stuff and y'all make it possible, so thank you for funding my dreams. Back to it. These split factions, a group of mostly adults who did rants and commentaries with a larger audience, versus us, a bunch of mostly teenagers who were making silly videos of our inside jokes for fun. I was one of the few girls in the group, which for whatever reason meant that I was competing with a girl in the other group? A girl I don't think I've ever really spoken to one-on-one. I didn't really know anyone from the other group, but I saw the videos that they made about my friends, so I mean, I'd formed my opinions from the behavior that they displayed in public. And they formed their opinions on me, from only this rant I made. On doors. And I experienced my first instance of someone doing a commentary on one of my videos. And the attention sucked. It had a domino effect of false DMCA flags on my main channels, a lot of harassment in the form of spam comments, trolls adding me on Skype, gory images sent to me via email, threats of assault, saying I deserved to be mugged and killed. You get the gist, it sucked. And I, an anxious neurodivergent agoraphobe with parents who watched every move I made online, with alerts set up for my usernames, we're gonna find this commentary. And I went full panic. I naively thought that there was good in every person, and if I can just explain myself, if I can find common ground with this person who was so much more popular than I was, who had a platform based around logic and reason, who was 10 years my senior, I thought if we just talked in a Skype call, we could find common ground and solve the whole mess. And I was very, very wrong about that. I was warned that he recorded every call and would post them, so I was encouraged to record it myself. I asked him why he was mad at me, and he said that he felt that my rant was pretentious and an insult to him and his friends, and I didn't see how, so I asked, and he just yelled at me. He insulted me, he used word salad tactics, where nothing really leads to a conclusion, it's just a cycle of insults. It's an abuse tactic that he was pretty proud of. And in this recording, I explained myself. I tried appealing to his empathy, of which was long dried up. He admitted he just harassed people because it was funny. Because he doesn't care who he hurt. And 15-year-old me, maybe 16, repeated his words back to him. You don't care? You admit you like hurting people? I was baffled. But I thought, aha, he's just admitted it. He admitted he likes to hurt people because he finds it funny. So I cut out the portion where I mentioned my school by name, and I cut out some pauses, and I showed it to my friends. Remember when I said that we had a mole in the group? Well, the recording made its way back to him pretty quick. He and his girlfriend would then make more videos about me as a result. On other video sites even, ripping me to shreds, calling me an attention whore who thought herself to be a princess who everyone should kneel before. And their fans loved it, because I kept trying to appeal to each and every one of their humanity, every time that someone approached me or reached out to me. Because underneath it all, I wanted the videos down out of fear that my family would find them, because if they did, my only social outlet would be unplugged. I had very few friends by this point in high school, many of which were the turn your back, they talk smack kind, and venting to even one of them about this happening was a mistake, because word spread fast, and kids who were already pretty mean to me in class now had ammunition. They knew I made YouTube videos, they knew I sung weeby Vocaloid songs, and that I made enemies for a dumb rant about doors. In one class, a boy who would sometimes tug on my ponytail showed me a picture on his phone from several desks away. It was a screenshot from the video that was ripping me to shreds. I didn't want him showing people. I thought he had the whole video on his phone for some reason. So I tattled on him, and his phone was taken away. Our school required a guardian to come by to pick up confiscated items, so he was pissed. He started throwing words at me after school, just words, but I acted catty and I basically said, well, it serves you right. So he grabbed my book bag, which was heavy and full of textbooks, and I fell down like a turtle and got a stomp or two on my ribs. Light bruising to the bone, a scratch or two, nothing major, but to me at the time, this felt huge. Like, this had never happened before. In my whole world online, my escape from reality had started leaking. Suddenly, everything was contaminated. A man who I'd only spoken to once or twice for a fandom project was now suddenly very interested in my story, and he, a grown man, was asking me, a teenage girl, for photos of my chest to prove to him that I had bruises on my ribs. So I blocked him, and he donated 2 cents to my PayPal account with a note that says, here's my 2 cents, you're a lying bleep. PayPal showed him my address for some terrifying reason, so now he had my address and my phone number. I had no idea this dude with a fandom project was a fan of the dude who did the commentary on me, so I was doxxed soon after in Facebook statuses, videos, comment sections, and even later in Encyclopedia Dramatica page. Again, entirely different video for the future. We'll get there, but not today. So as you can imagine, my family found out from the numerous phone calls and my anxiety getting so bad that I was developing a stress hernia that I had to see a doctor for. I couldn't swallow my food because I was in a constant state of panic, and a disorder would start forming as a result. I checked my phone obsessively throughout the school days, desperately trying to play damage control. It felt like I was constantly falling, dropping out of myself with fear whenever even the smallest thing reminded me of any of it. And if you have trauma or an anxiety disorder, I'm so sorry, you know exactly what dropping feeling I'm talking about. And it drives you to persistent nausea. Even after leaving the group of friends that I had, deleting myself from the group channel, and saying goodbye on the forums, I had completely dropped off those circles, just like the other group wanted. But even doing that, I was pulled out of school one day and in the lobby of the main office when my family told me I had to delete everything. Every art piece I'd posted online, every fandub that I'd made, every social app. It was happening. I was being unplugged from everywhere. Sure, I'd try to go behind their backs and catch up with friends or try incognito tricks, maybe go on my friends' phones, but I got away with nothing. I'd always be found out no matter how good I got at hiding my tracks. So I really did have to say goodbye. Did I mention I was dating someone in this group at this time? Yeah, we were both messed up kids with messed up history, but through all of this, I ended up having to ghost him completely. I was getting closer to a controlling boy at school who y'all might know as Egg. Didn't even know that he was a big part of the reason my worlds had leaked together. Even when we weren't dating, I was supposed to be his. It was gross. It was the only tangible chance, though, I had to get away from my family. So, though we never slept together, I moved in with him briefly. So, on top of everything, not only did I ghost this poor guy from my friend group, but he had to grow and come to terms with the narrative that I'd been cheating on him. I don't blame him for feeling hurt. I wish he never had to feel that pain. And while there are always going to be things that I look back on and think, God, we were terrible for one another, to this day, I still have to thank him for his patience while I was a total nervous wreck. Because he only ever dated a nervous, anxious wreck of a person who would one day disappear on him completely. So, how could a story like this help anyone? It's just hurt, and more hurt, right? It's a tale of my involvement with people who hurt me after they were involved with people who hurt them. People would change sides moment to moment. What good could come from that? Well, time made me the fool. Because here I was worried about how could I ever pull the good from the story to make it worth telling. But it's just too sad, you know? But the story kept developing. 10 years later, someone I only rarely spoke to reached out to me, and it was revealed that everyone from back then from our old group had been making connections again. I hated high school. I had no intention of attending my reunion, but just some days ago, I had the chance to meet everyone again, to catch up, to see where everyone ended up, and largely the turnout is so progressive. So many of us did so much growing and so much learning, and many of us went to therapy. Many of us came out of the closet. Many of us found ourselves in some way or another, and combined memories would come from seemingly out of nowhere. That feeling of coming home from school 10 years ago and hopping on with my friends to talk about video games on sale or memes or the stupid stuff that made us happy, that spark, it was still alive. Hearing old voices I hadn't heard in years laughing together like no time had passed at all. This story ended up having a happy ending after all, so that's it. Thank you for listening, take care, and I'll see you next week.